right at the top.
We are on 23. Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph, following the art scroll, it's 23A1, right at the beginning. So we have the Mishnah. Let's review 1 minute what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah explained to us that on each day of the calendar year, which a person reads the Torah, there are different customs as to how many minhagim halacha in terms of which. In terms of how many people you're going to call up to the Sefer Torah. So as an example, we said Monday, Thursday, 3. Shabbat afternoon mincha, 3. Rosh Chodesh Chol HaMoed, 4. What's it called? Now we're up to the next one. B'Yom Tov, holiday, 5. Yom Kippur, 6. So each time we're going through all the different opinions and all the different dates and how many olim there are. B'Yom Tov Chamisha, B'Yom Kippurim Shisha. So you read 5 on Yom Tov and 6 on Kippur. Gemara says, okay, let's figure this out. Matnitan Mani. Who are we going according to over here? Lo Rabbi Ishmael, Lo Rabbi Akiva. So every time we find that there's an established machloket in something, 2 opinions, and the 2 opinions occupy A and B, if I now find the Mishnah that says C, that's a very strange thing. Why? Let me just be clear. Because C is not B and it's not A. And also, when you listed A and B, you didn't include a C. So I want to try and figure out now, who is this opinion of the Mishnah that you just quoted? Says the Gemara, Lo Rabbi Ishmael, Lo Rabbi Akiva. It's not Rabbi Ishmael, it's not Rabbi Akiva. Detanya, the Braita says, Yom Tov Chamisha, Yom Kippur Shisha, Ubi Shabbat Shiva. On Yom Tov, 5, Yom Kippur, 6, and on Shabbat, 7. Would you mind closing the door? Sorry. Thank you so much. And on Shabbat, 7. En pochatin mehen ve'en mosifin aleim. You don't go less, and you don't add on to those. Divrei Rabbi Ishmael. These are the words of Rabbi Ishmael. So far, everything seems to fit pretty much, right? Yeah, is that clear? Are we with? Yeah. Rabbi Akiva says, Yom Tov Chamisha, Yom Kippurim Shiva, Ubi Shabbat Shisha, and on Shabbat 6. Right? Maybe he went to first minyan. Okay. En pohatin mehen. You don't do less. Aval mosifin alehem. You don't do less than, but you're allowed to do more than. So, says the Gemara, Mani, Rabbi Ishmael, if it's going according to Rabbi Ishmael, Kashya Tosefet. We have a problem on Tosefet, because if you remember, the Mishnah said exactly the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael, except that the Mishnah said that on those days that people are not working, i.e. Shabbat, i.e. Kippur, i.e. Yom Tov, they're not working. The halakha is you can't go less, but you're able to go more. Rabbi Ishmael says no less, no more. So the dates and the amount of olim work out, but the opinion, the shita of en pochatin ve'en mosifin doesn't work. And if you want to say Rabbi Akiva, who says you don't do less but you do more, Rabbi Akiva, Kashya, Shisha, V'Shiv'a, we have a problem with the 6 and the 7. Why? Because in our Mishnah we said Yom Kippur 6, Shabbat 7. Rabbi Akiva says the opposite. Okay, so then who is our Mishnah going according to? Gemara answers, Amarava, Talid Rabbi Ishmael. The opinion is of the yeshiva of Rabbi Ishmael. The Tana Rabbi Ishmael, the yeshiva of Rabbi Ishmael taught, B'Yom Tov Hamisha, Yom Kippur Shisha, B'Shivat Shiva, all like our Mishnah, En Pochatim Mehen, Aval Mosifin Alehem, Divrei Rabbi Ishmael. That's how that's how Rabbi Ishmael holds. So we have a problem now, because the Tana de Rabbi Ishmael is who? The yeshiva of Rabbi Ishmael. But Rabbi Ishmael, in the Braita we just saw that argued with Rabbi Akiva, said differently than his own yeshiva. The Gemara says, Kasha de Rabbi Ishmael, ad Rabbi Ishmael. We have a question now, a contradiction between the 2 opinions that are brought in the name of Rabbi Ishmael. The Gemara says, Tanai aliba de Rabbi Ishmael. No, we have 2 Tanaim that are arguing in what Rabbi Ishmael held. So we're going to go according to the opinion within Rabbi Ishmael. And by the way, if you think that this is rare, you have not been paying attention. Yeah, you know, how many times, Chamuvadia says this. You go to other rabbi, Chamuvadia said the other thing. And then you're like, well, which one is going? I go according to this rabbi, according to Chamuvadia. Right? So you're following one opinion. Oh my gosh, ask someone about bikes. Forget about it. Gemara says, Man tana leha detanya. Who taught leha detanya? That was taught in the following Braita. So who is the one that taught us this? Yom Tov, Ma'acharin Lavo Marin Latzet. On Yom Tov, people come late to the synagogue, and Ma'acharin Latzet, and they're rushing to leave. What is the idea over there? Since when it comes to Yom Tov, there's always a lot of different things that a person needs to get, to get done. So therefore, the Ma'acharin Lavo, we start the services at a later point, and we don't do it longer because we wanted to be able to go home and have a meal on Yom Tov. Remember, the meal on Yom Tov is not just akel. The meal on Yom Tov is a mitzvah from the Torah. V'samachta b'chagecha. B'yom HaKippurim, in Ma'arin Lavo, on Yom Kippur, we start early. We get the guys there early. Ma'acharin latzet, and you take them. You don't worry about the getting out of shul time. Again, that's not borne out in actual practice. But Ma'acharin latzet, we don't mind that your person left the shul later. It's okay. Why? What are you doing? Where are you going? There's no eating. There's no doing anything. Where are you going to go? Anytime the person's not in the synagogue on Yom Kippur is only inviting, in some ways, a deterioration of their Yom Kippur state of mind. What are they talking about? What are they getting involved in? Where's their head at? Guy's sleeping. Okay, at least he's sleeping. But many times it's not what's happening. So it would have been better for the guy not to leave the shul. Maharin latzet. The Shabbat. Maharin lavo. Maharin latzet. On Shabbat, we come early. Maharin latzet. And we leave early. Why we maharin lavo? Because when it comes to Shabbat, a person, you can't cook on Shabbat. So therefore, everything needs to be done from before. So once Shabbat hits, there's no point in letting someone come late because there's no preparations that are allowed to be done. So therefore, Shabbat, we rush to it to come to Shabbat, and we rush to leave Ma'arin Latzet because also we want to have the Seudah, because the Seudah Shabbat is also a mitzvah. Gemara says, which opinion holds this opinion that when it comes to Yom Kippurim, Mima'arin lavo u'mima'arin latzet, and you take time. Lema Rabbi Akiva. Let's hold Rabbi Akiva. T'itle gavri yetera, because Rabbi Akiva holds on Yom Kippur that you don't call 6. How many you call? 7. So this opinion that says that Yom Kippur you come to shul early and you leave late. What does it mean leaving late? He's not worried about you staying in shul longer. So you see that seems to side with Rabbi Akiva, who says you add a reader. The Gemara says, even according to Rabbi Ishmael says that you hold 6. It doesn't mean he doesn't want you to stay later in shul on Yom Kippur. He says, yeah, it's true that you don't have the extra reading in the Torah portion, but there's so many extra things that we have to say on the day in the prayer of the day. There's the avodah. There's the selichot again and again and again. So even though the Rabbi Ishmael did not hold of 7 readers, instead he went with 6, it doesn't mean that he holds that a person should objectively think memaharin that you should run out of shul on Yom Kippur. He could also hold me'acharin latzet. The Gemara says, okay, where do we get these numbers from? Hani shelosha chamisha v'shivea keneged mi. When we have 3 people that are reading Torah on Monday and Thursday, what does that represent? Why 3? The Gemara says, Pligi Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani, v'cha de'ime. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani, and someone else argued this point. We're not sure who that someone else is, it seems, until the Gemara says, Umanu, and who is that person? Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. So it's a strange way of setting this up. Normally you'd say, machlok between this guy and this guy. You don't say machlok between this guy and someone who was with him. And who was the person who was with him? This guy. What are we trying to say? We'll see in just a second. Some people say, Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi v'chad de'imeh. Some people say Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi and one person who was with him. Umano, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. And they set up the exact same strange language the other way around. Rabbi Shimon bar Nachmani. And some people say it was the person who was with Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi was not Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani, but rather Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani. Chad amar keneged bekat kohanim. One says that this idea of having the 3 readers is keneged the 3 pesukim. Yivarech Hashem v'shmerecha, Yeh Hashem panav v'dechuneka, Yisam alei panav v'dechuneka shalom. So there's 3 verses of beracha in bekat kohanim. Chad amar keneged shlosha shomrei asaf. One person says, no, this corresponds to the three Shomrei Asaf, that there are three guardians of Saf, means the door post, the bottom of the door frame. So the threshold of the door. So these three Mishomrei Asaf, those are the ones that we're referring to. Where do we find this idea of three? Hamisha miro'eh pnei hamelech, 5 who are in the inner chamber who could see the king. Shiv'ah ro'eh pnei hamelech, and 7 who also see the king's face. So there's 3 different levels of people who were with the king, and that was, so to speak, represented by the royal procedure of a king. 3 people guard the entranceway to the Beit HaMikdash. Then you have inside, or the king, as an example. Then you have 5 more people that are inside and seeing the king, and 7 more people as well that are seeing the king. So those 3 numbers. So the first one of them is represented by the 3 olim. Now, again, remember, let's now just go back to what this idea is. The idea of 3 Mishomrei Asaf means that there are 3 people who guard the opening to the entranceway to the king. When we're talking about taking out the Sefer Torah and having people read the Torah, the idea is that when you're going up to the Torah, you're greeting the king. Isn't that amazing? And once I saw this Gemara, it made so much sense to me that how do we start, if you're Sephardic, how do you start the Aliyah? Ashkenazim say, Rabbanan Baruch Hashem Vorach. What does Sephardim say? Hashem Imachem. According to this opinion in the Gemara, that the 3 was representative of the fact that there's a gateway to God, and that gateway to God is through the reading of the Torah of the 3 olim. Therefore, we're saying using the 3 olim is Amunah Imachem. The powerful idea of what that expression means from the Gemara. The other opinion, what does the other opinion say? Keneged Birkat Kohanim. The idea is Birkat Kohanim. Now, this seems a little bit random. What's the connection between the fact that there's 3 verses in Birkat Kohanim and there's 3 olim? I get that they both are the number 3. Were we just looking for other things that are 3? How come no one said there's 3 forefathers? What do you guys think? What are we connecting over here when we talk about Shomrei Asaf? I understand. Part of the way you approach God is by learning the Torah that teaches you about Him. I get that. And that's the Shomrei Asaf. But what's this other opinion? That there's 3 and it's Keneged, the blessings of the Kohanim. What does that have to do with anything?
Something to do with the sacrificial offerings?
Sorry?
Something to do with the sacrifices that we make for the Kohanim?
How is that connected to the reading of the Torah, which is on every parasha? Nothing to do necessarily with Korbanot. Sorry? But that's not the 3 berachot of the Kohanim. So I think there's something very beautiful in this opinion, and it says that 3 berachot of the Kohanim are Yivarecha, right? Yair and Yishmerecha. So there's Yisah Shepanav V'chuneka, right? That's the idea. But what are the 3 dominant themes in Birkat Kohanim? The first blessing is protection. The second blessing is
grace.
Is chen, right? Is right? Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka. You should be granted chen, grace. The third blessing is shalom. Rabbis teach us that each one of these things is the domain of the Torah. We say Torah magina umatzla. Torah guards and protects. That's v'yishmerecha. Then chen, the pasuk says la'anavim yiten chen. A person who studies Torah is granted a chen that comes from the Torah. Why? Because the pasuk says derachea darche noam, right? V'chonetivotei shalom. So the person becomes, or at least they're supposed to, if they're studying Torah properly, they become refined, and that gives them a chen. And the last one is the pasuk says shalom. The last beracha of the Kohanim, the pasuk says about the Talmidei Chachamim, Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Shneimar v'chol banaich l'mudei Amonai Rav Shalom Banaich. Al tikre banaich ela bonaich. The ones who study Torah are people that bring Shalom. So therefore, the 3 olim to the Torah are keneged the 3 berachot of the Birkat Kohanim. Hidush. Let's continue. Says the Gemara. Amale Abaye. Abaye said upon this Braita. Ada idna maitama lo parish lamar. How come you never told this to us? Amale lo hava yadana. I did not know that you didn't know this information. Umi baitu minai milta velo armi lechu. Did you ever ask me for something in Torah that I didn't tell you? I love this Gemara. Because what does this Gemara do? In Shamayim, this is going to be the Gemara I'm going to come with.
Someone said, I don't know.
Someone said, Rabbi never told me. I'm going to say, he said, Rabbi never asked. So when Hashem comes to blame me for all the Torah I didn't teach, the people who were not interested in learning, I'm going to say, but Hashem, Megillah, we learned in Masechet. Hashem's going to say, Megillah. Did anyone ever ask me that I told them I'm not interested? Person came to ask me something, I'm like, nah, I don't want to tell you, teach you Torah. Right? I didn't tell you because you didn't ask. All right. Ask and you shall receive. Let's continue. Amale Yaakov mina l'Rav Yehuda. Yaakov mina said to Rav Yehuda, Hana yishishad Yom Kippurim kineged mi. So what do we have already? We already have 3, but then we also had in the same teaching of Shomrei Asaf, the guardians of the threshold, we also learned 3 and 5 and 7. So we have 3, 5, and 7 already within that explanation. But where do we get 6 from? Okay, it says the Gemara, Hanishad Yom Kippurim kineged mi. The Gemara answers, Amale kineged shisha she'amdu mimino shel Ezra v'shisha misimolo. Ezra has 6 people standing on his right and 6 on his left. Let's see the pasuk in its entirety. Shneimar, look at the inside, the inside column. Sorry, outside column. V'ya'amod Ezra Sofer al migdal etz. Ezra Sofer stood on a tower of wood. Asher asu ladavar, that they had made for that purpose. V'ya'amod etzlo, and who stood next to him? Matitya, V'Shema, V'Aniya, V'Uriya, V'Chilkiya, U'Ma'aseya al yemino. All of those were on his right. U'Misimolo, Pidaya, U'Mishael, U'Malkiya, V'Hashum, V'Hashbadana, Zechaya, Mishulam. So the pasuk tells us all the people that stood on his right and all the people that stood on his left. And that's when Ezra read the Torah. There was, now we have, the Oleh, the guy, and the Somech, 3 people. Back then, they built a platform, and Ezra was reading, 6 people on his right, 6 people on his left when he read the Torah for the people. Okay? So the Gemara says, so what are the 6? The 6 is, what's it called? Is for that purpose. Now the Gemara asks obvious question, which if you were reading in English, you would not think was a question. Hani Shiva. You just listed on the one side, on the second side, you listed 7 names. What are the 7 names? Pedaya, Mishael, Malkiya, Hashum, Hashbadana, Zechariah, and Mishulam. And the Gemara says, no, those 2, right? Hainu Zechariah, Hainu Mishulam. Zechariah and Mishulam is the same person. V'amai karao Mishulam. Why did he call him Mishulam if his name was Zechariah? My answer is the Mishulam ba'ovadayeh, because he had an element of perfection, of wholeness, of completeness in his personality. So he was given this title Mishulam. So not just Zechariah, he was called Zechariah Mishulam. Now I was a little bit wondering about this. Can anyone figure out what I was wondering about? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to ask a question.
Go for it. Question.
Why are there 6 people to his right, 6 people to his left?
So the Gemara doesn't say why Ezra, what was the logic behind those 6 people. But it seems like the point is that when a person is studying Torah, they're flanked by 6, whether it's angels or 6 people that are standing with him. So this number of 6 people that are with him when he's studying the Torah, when he's reading the Torah, so therefore to reference that, we talk about the 6 olim that go up to the Torah, because those are the people that stood by Ezra now it does not tell us the Kabbalistic idea or reasoning behind Ezra's 6 people. But it's referencing, when we have 6, we're referencing those those
So
olim.
why don't we send up 12?
What do we call 12?
Excellent question. So it's one on one side and one on the other side, indicating that actually the correct number is 6. But the person needs to be surrounded by 6. So to be surrounded by 6, you have to have 6 on each side, because we're not capable of having someone be on both sides. But what is the number? It doesn't say that he had 12 people with him. 6 on one side, 6 on the other, in which case they would call 12. The idea here was that there's something special about the number 6 with regards to reading the Torah. It's just that he had 6 on each side. I was going to ask a different question though.
What's the kesher between 6 and Yom Kippur?
So when we find that there's 6 with regards to reading of the Torah, so on Yom Kippur, we're referencing the pure way, or the purest way of reading the Sefer, and therefore we're going to do it in the way that Ezra HaSofer did it. But to me, there's only one guy whose last name is Mishulam. By the way, how much do we all want to have Mishulam added to our name right now? Did you imagine that? What's your name? Shlomo Mishulam. Oh, Mishulam? No, it's just that all of my deeds are perfect. I think some people call themselves Mishulam until their wife hears about it. Yeah, what?
They say the Saraphim have 6 wings, right?
That yes, excellent. The Malachim have 6 wings, but the Gemara doesn't bring that that's the reason. The Gemara doesn't say that it's because Keneged the 6 wings. So what's interesting to me is that you have a guy, Zechariah Mishulam. Which side would you assume that you would put the perfect guy?
The right.
The right side. And he's not only is he on the left side, he's the last one you list.
You have to balance out the guys on the right.
That's good. I like that. So I have 2 answers to this. 2 answers to this. One answer to this is that same way that we find when a person, when they finish the Amidah, we bow left, and what do we say? Because our left is the right of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the person to the furthermost left is to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the furthermost right. So that's why Zechariah Mishulam was all the way on the right side. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2. The left side we know is always the side of judgment, of deen. Right side is always chesed. Who's the person that could stand on the leftmost side of the left, which is the greatest element of Midat Adin? Is the guy that was the most perfect. So in a state of judgment, who do you want that's going to be standing there? The guy that is least susceptible to Midat Adin. So therefore, the leftmost of the left is Zechariah Mishulam. Okay, Chidush. Let's carry on. The reason why I say Chidush, Rabotai, is not to brag. It's just that if it's wrong, you blame me. You don't blame the Gemara. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you said you move to the left, when you say Vekara Zel Kadosh, right? People go to the right or to the left first?
Excellent question.
'Cause
Can
I'm
I tell you why?
confused.
I tell you why. There is nowhere in halakha that describes what should be done in this case. So we have brought down that you go bow to the left by 3 steps back from the Amidah. We don't have what to do by Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Doesn't say. So some people just do the same thing that they do by Amidah. Other people say no. The only time you could say that you're in Hashem's presence is when you're in the Amidah, when you're in when you're in Kiddusha. Who says that you're in the same presence of God like you find by the Amidah and the silent prayer? That's the question that they ask. Okay, so maybe you should revert back to the fact that everything else goes right first and then left. So the reason why the right first left is because of that. The reason why the left first right is because some people say, what do you mean? If the reason is because you're in God's presence, the Zohar actually says that when a person is saying Kiddusha, they should be looking up at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the power of looking towards God during Kiddusha and saying Kadosh, 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 sanctifying Hashem's name, is such a powerful prayer that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him and blesses him and gives him what he needs, etc., etc., etc. The other opinion in the Gemara in the Zohar says, what do you mean? But you can't look. To open your eyes when you're sitting in Kiddusha to God is a problem. How could you lift your eyes and look at God? You're not supposed to lift your eyes, and they bring a proof that if you lift your eyes and you look at God, it's a problem. So what do they say in the Zohar? True. He should lift his eyes, but his eyes should be closed. Accomplishing both. According to that opinion, that you're wrapped in a talit, you're lifting your eyes to Hashem, you're standing in the presence of God, just like you would find by Amidah. which would lead us to again say the Karazel Zevama should be left to right. I have not found anything definitive, and I've asked some people that are much greater than me, and they did not have a source either.
So which way do you do it?
I do left and then right.
I always did left and right, and someone said you should do right first.
So again,
Confusing.
so some people say right first, because if you don't have a specific source telling you that it's the same as Amidah, so therefore you would rely on the normal where you always go right. Problem is that we do have a source. Sorry?
When we take the 3 steps back, we go left foot first then, right?
Sorry?
When we take 3 steps back, we go left foot, left foot, and then bow left and then right?
Yeah, but that's less to do. That's less to do with this. That's because when you're reverting out, so it's done with weakness, so to speak. When you're leaving the presence. Yeah? Okay. Let's carry on. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Hakol olim leminyan shiva. Everybody counts when it comes to shiva. When you count 7 readers, everybody counts. Afilu katan ve'afilu isha. Uh-oh. Even someone who's less than bar mitzvah, and even someone who is a woman. Yishtabach shemo, huh? Yishtabach shema. What's going on over here? Right? Is that the halacha? Is that the halacha? Is it the halacha that we send up someone less than bar mitzvah for an aliyah, not to read from the Torah, for an actual aliyah? You send up an 8-year-old?
Send them up, but they don't count, right?
So it says over here you can count him as one of the 7. So there's a she'elah if it's only for the last one, or if it's only when there's 7. But it seems clear from this Gemara, right? Now, just because you have a Gemara doesn't mean that we rule according to that specific Gemara. But the Gemara says explicitly, Filu katan v'afilu isha. Aval amru chachamim, isha lo tikra b'Torah mepnei kavod tzibur. A woman should not read from the Torah because it's not kavod for the tzibur. What's the lack of kavod of the tzibur that the woman is called up? Right?
Men, no?
One opinion is that, look, you're saying you couldn't find any one of the men that was able to go read the Torah, right? Or was worthy of an aliyah. It's not kavod tzibur. There's other opinions that learn this Gemara differently, and they say that that's not what kavod tzibur means. It's not that there's a lack because you can't find another person, but rather, let's take a look for 1 second. Where is this here? I want to show you Rashi in just 1 minute on this idea of kavod. I want to show you a beautiful Rashi, which is on the next piece. Okay, says the, and then we'll come back to this as well. Okay, but so Lema'aseh, the Gemara says that she should not go up. So therefore, she doesn't. The Gemara now says, okay, how do we understand these 7 readers? How do we divide them? Ibayelahu, we asked, Maftir, Ma'u shiyaleh leminyan shiva. Do we count maftir as number 7, or do we have 7 and then maftir? Rav Huna and Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Rav Huna and Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba were arguing in this point. Chad Amar Ole, one of them says he goes up. V'chad Amar en Ole, and one says no, it counts as the 7. One says en Ole, you have to have 8. Manda Amar Ole, the one that says it counts as with the 7. Dehakari, because you are reading from the Torah, right? Because before you read the Haftarah, you're reading the last piece. Again, Manda Amar en Ole, and the one that says it doesn't count, Kidu he's going to the opinion of Ula. The Amar Ula says, why are you reading? Why is Maftir actually reading in the Torah? Why don't we just say the Beracha and have him read straight from the Haftarah? The Gemara answers, Kavod HaTorah, in order to find Kavod from the Torah. The Mishum Kavod HaTorahu. So therefore, what do we say? Since it's because of Kavod HaTorah, Leminyane Lo Sadik. It doesn't count as one of the 7. Let's look at Rashi for 1 second. You see Rashi? Mepnei Kavod HaTorah. Everyone take a look at Rashi for 1 second. Rashi says, Shelo yeh Kavod Torah u'Kavod Navi shaveh. That we should not have the honor of the Torah and the honor of Navi equal. V'kivan de mishum kavod Torahu, since it's because of kavod Torah, V'lo mishum chova, and not because it's obligatory. Lav miminyanahu. Why do we have the guy read from the Torah? Because we don't want to have that you have a guy go up to the Torah, or aliyah. Then there's another aliyah, and the guy goes up for aliyah of haftarah. That would equate an aliyah of haftarah, an aliyah of Torah. So therefore, what do we have him do? We have him read again from the Torah in order to show that that Torah and Nevi'im and Ketuvim are not the same level of holiness. Okay, so we do something to draw that disparity. If that's the case, so it's not an obligatory reading, if it's not obligatory reading, therefore it doesn't count as one of the 7. Okay, is that clear so far?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Now, what I found interesting over here is, what does it mean, Mipshum Kavod Torah? What are we saying over here? So since there's a doubt, we want to make sure that Kavod Torah and Kavod of Nach are not equated. So therefore, what do we have you do? We had you read Kavod Torah again. It's interesting. So one of the things that this brought up in my mind is that there's 2 ways of understanding the concept of what Kavod means. One way of understanding Kavod is that I honor something, right? And if I honor something else, those 2 things are not connected. I gave you kavod, I gave that guy kavod. Now did I give you less kavod? Because I also gave him kavod. Why is kavod something which relies on the way you treat, that person? What does my kavod do with yours?
It's all relative.
Sorry?
It's relative. Kavod is relative.
Kavod is relative. So one would not imagine that those 2 things were linked.
They are linked.
Explain.
Because if you're giving kavod to the rabbi and giving kavod to Jack, I may give you kavod in one way and him in a different way. They're related, but they're different. So
Okay.
now you're reading the Torah and reading the maftir.
Yeah.
If you don't read the Torah portion first, you're equating the maftir with the Torah.
So what I'm trying
It's
to
not the same kavod.
So what I'm trying to ask is that, let's say I kiss the Torah. So now I kiss the Haftarah. Problem?
No.
Why? I should have to half kiss the Haftarah. You see what I'm saying? What are we doing here? What's the problem? The guy got an aliyah. The other guy got an aliyah. Okay, so I do a mitzvah midoraita. I also do a mitzvah midorabanan. Oh, you just ruined the mitzvah midoraita. Because you kept this mitzvah, and now you kept this mitzvah. Why does doing something... I lit a mitzvah midrabanan of Chanukah. Oh, you just ruined Nerot Shabbat.
For the mitzvah,
Why?
first one,
Why does having an aliyah of haftarah make kavod Torah less?
Torah is from Hashem.
No, that's not my question though. What I'm asking is that why does the aliyah to haftarah ruin the aliyah to Torah?
First go to the main.
Sorry? But you did it last. Forget the count. No, see, Harry made a good point. If you were counting it as one of the 7, then that would be a lack of kavod Torah. But that's not what the Gemara says.
It's an 8th.
The Gemara says, even when it's an 8th, because you know what the proof is? Let's say we made it 8th. You still have to read from the Torah before you read the Haftarah.
Yeah, but
Why?
We do a lot of things on purpose to avoid any misunderstanding from people if someone were to walk in or come in late or understand things differently. So if someone were to come in, then you see that you're still reading the Torah and then the Haftarah. If they maybe missed the beginning, it's like the same way a Kohen, you don't send up a second Kohen for Levi if there's no Levi.
Well, technically, exactly the same scenario could happen even when you read from the Torah. Because the guy makes another beracha after the Torah. So what if the guy came in 1 minute after he read from the Torah? You're going to have him read again from the Torah and again and again and again because we're always worried the guy will come late. The guy made another beracha and then read from the Haftarah. If that's when he came, he would only see the guy reading from the Haftarah.
but the reading, for reading the Haftarah, you read it in the Torah.
Correct.
So you still reaffirm the strength of
But
the
so
Torah.
if the point is that the guy's going to come late, like Harry's saying, so then he could miss that too. Like you had him read from the Torah and then he missed it. So the guy came after that. So what are we saying over here? What are we saying with this idea of kavod Torah? That having that last aliyah, you have to read from the Torah, because if you didn't read from the Torah, then we equated the Torah. Then it's not kavod for the Torah. What does that mean?
That's Torah trump everything else, basically.
Well, it does. It definitely does. But what I'm asking is, why is doing this a chisaron? Why does that create a lack in the kavod Torah just because you also read from the Nevi'im Ketuvim?
Is it because the Navi is related to the Torah?
What do you
The
mean?
portion that we read
Yeah,
is related to
it
the
is.
parasha?
It does correspond. Yes.
So that has nothing to do with the kavod.
Well, I wouldn't imagine. I mean, look, we could have decided not to read the Haftarah. Why did we decide to read the Haftarah? If you remember, do you guys remember why? When there was a Gezerah where they didn't let them read the Torah, what did they do instead? They found something from Nach that they were allowed to read. They didn't mind them reading from Nach. So they read something that was connected to that from before. And now that we were given the Torah back, once we started reading from the Haftarah, we're not going to stop a good practice. We're going to continue reading. We're going to continue reading from Nach. So now that's why we're still reading from the Haftarah. So why is this a problem? Why is this a problem? When we were reading from the Haftarah, we weren't reading from the Torah.
What if it's like?
What was the answer? We already said you can't judge a case which is impossible from a case which is possible. Back then we couldn't read from the Torah. Now we can. I think that there's something very subtle here. Yes, Manuel.
I was just thinking, like, what if it's like let's say the Torah is the father and the Haftarah is the son. You can't give the same kind of kavod to the. You have to have a difference of kavod for the father as opposed to the next generation.
Okay.
So the Torah begets Tanakh.
That's why it's last.
I guess, I'm going to Morris's point that it is relative.
Again, it's relative, and that's why it's last, because it's the least.
Yeah.
So the answer to this is that it doesn't help that it's last. Why? Because there's times when we don't read Haftarah. Would we say that the third Aliyah on Sunday, on Monday to Thursday is less because it's last? No. So unless you go out of your way to illustrate that there's a difference between the two cases, there's nothing saying that Nach is not Torah. How do you know the difference? Remember, especially back then, for us, you have a lot of people reading out of the Machzor. But they were reading, everything was on scrolls. So they read from the Torah scroll, and now you have another. It looks like there's two Sfarim now. Lest the people start, not because it's not enough of a differentiation, but people might not have realized that this was something else. That there is a difference between Nach and Torah. They may have just thought that this was also Torah. So therefore, in order to institute that and make sure that it's clear, we don't read from this one until we read again from that one. That illustrates that this thing is not the same level as the other one. That's the kavod. Why am I sharing this? First of all, I think there's a tremendous lesson in kavod here. Sometimes kavod is about what you give someone. Sometimes kavod is about what you're giving to that person as opposed to what you gave to the other person. Imagine you say to the guy, look, I want you to come sit right next to me over here. Rabbi, I have the greatest respect for you. Next, all of a sudden, 2 minutes later, right, someone else comes in, the lowlife of the community. You say, come, Dachilak, please sit next to me. I want you to sit right up. A second ago, the rabbi felt so special. Look how you treated him. Now, the rabbi feels like it's not a special treatment for my Torah. That's how you treat everybody, which, by the way, is a nice thing that you treat everybody nicely. But then you didn't have what a second ago was perceived as kavod Torah is now just seen as kavod that you give to everybody. So now you actually rescinded your kavod of Torah. It's beautiful kavod abiriyot, but it's not kavod Torah anymore. Okay? So why am I sharing all this? Because I think it's very interesting as well. When it says earlier, kavod tzibur. Once you see in Rashi that kavod is not only a self-contained analysis, is this kavod per se? It might not be that having a woman go get an aliyah, according to that opinion, is a problem in and of itself of kavod. But rather what it does is it creates a lack of kavod in the other way around. Now, why would I assume that it's a negative thing that a woman had to get an aliyah and a man didn't get aliyah? If women were getting aliyot, then it would be a normal thing. The answer is that, remember, women don't have an obligation in Talmud Torah. So if you're taking someone that has an obligation to study, and you're taking someone who does not have that obligation to study Torah in the same way, right? They're not obligated in the same way, like the Gemara says. Why did they go to the Beit HaMikdash? Right? The men were going to learn, the women l'shmoa, because they don't have the same chiyuv of pilpul, of studying Torah in depth. It's not the same chiyuv, and that's a proof from the Gemara itself by Hakel. and the children k'tei titen tzachar tov lemevi'ehem. So therefore, in a scenario where this man has a greater obligation, and the men who have that obligation aren't aware or don't know the thing, you actually it's a lack, it's a pigiyah in the kavod of the man who's obligated by giving it to the woman who's not obligated, and suddenly it shifts. Rashi's understanding in kavod Torah over here shifts our understanding in kavod of the tzibur earlier in the Gemara. Okay. Let's wrap up over here. The Gemara says, so is it counted as eighth or no? The Gemara answered, no. Why? Because it's not a chiyuv. You're only doing it out of kavod for the Torah. The Gemara says, mitveh, right? Hamaftir ben avi lo yivchot me-21 pesukim. A maftir can't be less than 21 pesukim. Why? Keneged shiv'a shekaru b'Torah, like the 7 who read in the Torah, and every person who reads Torah, minimum, how much does each aliyah have to be, as we explained earlier? 3 pesukim. V'im ita, if you hold that the maftir is not one of the 7, 24 havyan. Because if the maftir needs to read the pesukim as well, the maftir would have to read the last 3 pesukim again. You would need 8 times 3, which would be a minimum of 24. The Gemara answers, Kivan de mishum kavod Torah, since it's based on kavod Torah and not chiyuv, kinegdo nami lo ba'i. You don't also have to have the maftir reading the amount of pesukim in the Torah. Why? For the same reason. By the way, again, we're underscoring the same concept. What you could do in the Torah is 21 pesukim. The haftarah has to be at least minimum like that. If you were reading less of haftarah than you were reading of the Torah, one would imagine, because again, always something that you do less of is more valuable. So it would be a pigiyah in the kavod of the Torah. Kinegdo nami lo ba'i. Therefore, that last aliyah, since it's not a hayuv, it's just kavod, so therefore you don't need to match it in the length of the haftarah. Matkif la Rava. Rava asks, Vare olo techem sefu, de lo havyan 21. There's a haftarah. The haftarah of olo techem sefu is not 21 pesukim, it's less ukarinan, but we read it. Gemara says, Shani hatam. There's a specific reason why. Disalik inyana, because since the point that we're trying to get across in the haftarah is over in less than 21 pesukim, so therefore you're allowed to end less than 21 pesukim because it's not a numbers game. If you were in the middle of something and you read 21 pesukim and you ended before the parasha ended, I would understand that you did it because of the number. But if it's a topic and it's less than that amount of pesukim, I understand that the reason why you read less is not because you're able to read less, but rather because you finish the topic. The Gemara says, "Vehecha de lo salik inyana lo," and when the idea is not finished, then you're not allowed to have less than 21. The Amar of Shmuel Barabba says, "Zimnin sagiin ava kaimna kamed Rabbi Yochanan." Many times I was by Rabbi Yochanan. He read 10 pesukim in the haftarah. Amalan afsiku. He said stop after 10 pesukim. The Gemara says, "Makom sheyesh turgeman shani." In the Rabbi Yochanan's case, there was a turgeman. There was someone who was translating. The Tani Rav Tachlif Abba Shmuel lo shanu. We did not say this halakha that you need 21 verses. Dafka makom only when en turgeman. Makom sheyesh turgeman, when there is a translator, the person's allowed to do even less than 21. Why? Since the guy is carrying on and going more pesukim, therefore the people are dichit. We don't want them to get drawn out to our tzibur, so therefore we'll allow to do it with less. Interestingly enough, there's one other example. They take out the Torah. The Torah is always taken out open. Haftarah always closed.
Yeah.
For this reason. Because of kavod Torah.
Oh, wow.
To illustrate, it's not the same thing.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes you have a guy, he thinks it's a great idea, give the kid open the haftarah. Not supposed to. Okay? So there's many things that are part of the minhagim that all of a sudden you look back, you notice it, like, oh yeah, maybe that's...
Like kiddush.
Sorry?
Like kiddush with the challah that's covered.
Yes. What do you mean because of the embarrassment?
Right. Isn't that a kavod thing too?
That's kavod for the wine. It's kavod for the bread, because normally the beracha of bread would precede the beracha of agefen, And since we're skipping its beracha, so in order that it should not be embarrassed, we cover the challah. All right, Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.